Welcome to the 20verse podcast. I'm the host, Valeria. Join me while I storytell about my life to hopefully help you through yours. Through my journey, I talk about healing, growing, and mindset. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode. Today, we are going to be talking about the terrible twos, but add a zero after the two. I made that up in my head once upon a time, I think a month ago. I'm sure you can find it somewhere, but for me, it's an original idea. And I also want to talk about the power of play. So, this came up for me because recently I reconnected with a friend I have. She is now 7 years old. So she is really just like a child and in grade 2. But we get along really, really well. The other night we started dancing to a song on a keyboard. I don't know if any of you had one of those keyboards when you were younger that had music attached to it that you could enter the digit and then you made a dance up for it. So I pressed the music and she's like, okay, these are our 3 dance moves. We get to dance while this song is on. And I just went along with it and I was like, okay. So we danced for like 30 minutes to different songs. I got incorporated into it. She started dancing. There's these moves that didn't even make sense, but they had ravishing names. And I really tapped into the play aspect of everything when she invited me to do that with her. And it reminded me of how much we just don't do that anymore when we grow up. And you might be like, oh, rolling my eyes, like, what do you mean? Like, we don't have time for that. But truly, you have to have time for that. Because truth is, we're all children once. There's no way that we can get into this 20verse without being children first. And what happens during that process of growing up is we start off as a young people that found everything amazing, found everything fascinating, found everything magnificent. Slowly through time, you start learning that some things aren't magnificent and some things are allowed to be, or you can play during this time but you can't play during this time, or then you start getting older and maybe your parents would see you on the couch and be like, oh, you're not doing anything, so here is some chores for you to do, go do something. So slowly we get conditioned into thinking that play is a waste of time and that play is something that only children have time for, because how could adults have time for that? And I want to disagree with that, because life would be so boring if we continued to think of play as something only children can do. And now we just need to allow ourselves to be able to play. And play can look multiple different ways. Maybe it's doing a sport but not competitively, or doing a sport and knowing it's just for fun. Maybe it's going out dancing. Maybe it's dancing alone. Maybe it's anything that allows you to be free. Because I don't want to get into this place where we start thinking that play is structured. Play is literally the opposite of structured. So it's something spontaneous. It's something just because you feel like it. It's something your body wants to express. And doing your passions can also be play. So now as adults, we can incorporate this concept into our lives if we allow it to, and if we are actually aware that that's an option for us. So I really, really enjoy my time with this little girl. I feel like we're the same age when we hang out. The people that would know me in person do often say that there's an innocence about me. And that innocence, for me, comes from the fact that I really do not like to engage in non-fun things, I guess. Like, of course, we as adults need to, now we have responsibilities, we have jobs, we have school, but with the closest people around me, I'm the most, I hate using the word goofy, but I'm the kind of person that I just say what I want. It doesn't even have to be a coherent sentence. And it'll just make people laugh around me because I'm just being authentically me in that moment. And now that may not show up the same for you, but regardless, you were a child once and you have play inside your spirit. So it's reconnecting with that part of ourselves that I think that we struggle with when we get older. Because some people that didn't get to experience childhood, quote unquote, were people, let's say, like immigrant parents or anyone that had like a really hard upbringing that just had to go. They didn't have time to play in the playground. They didn't have time to do anything because they were put to work right away. And I think that if you've ever observed children that grew up in survival and children who grew up with love and space to play, you know that as adults they handle life differently. On one hand, one just thinks that life is about working hard and getting bruises on your body and all those, sorry, speaking about these things, just but yeah, some people just don't see life as something that you can play with. It's just like you just gotta grind till you die. And there's some other people that have been showed the way of, yeah, you can be a child, like go ahead, go play this, go play that. um those people when they're older know the value of having just free time just to be who you want to be and who you are. So connecting with your inner child, I feel like a lot of individuals speak about this, but the way I see it is I am now a big person. I am who my 5-year-old self would consider, like, that's an adult. Like, she has her life together, right? And LOL at that now. But, why would I say LOL? So it's about recognizing that you were that child once and reconnecting to how they would see you right now. That child would probably be so freaking proud of who you've become, of what dreams you've pursued, of the challenges you've overcome, of the experiences you've had. They're like, holy shit, really? Like, you're so cool. You're so awesome. You were really sad that one day, but then you picked yourself up and did something about it. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. It's really a nice nurturing technique that I've also been practicing, where sometimes I felt just so disconnected in myself and so down about who I am or where can I possibly go, right? Like I'm really just one single human being and this like billion, like there's billion people in this planet. And this planet is so tiny and there's so many more planets outside. And I'm like, who am I to do anything in this world? And that's like a deep rooted belief that I had, especially in the earlier months of trying to rediscover who I want to be. And sometimes you can't have empathy for yourself because you haven't practiced it in so long, but one of the easiest things to do is have empathy for a child. If you see a child scrape their knee and they're right beside you, you would probably help them if they're really hurt, and you'd help them regardless. Just some people would laugh. I'm just thinking about my family members that would laugh. But if a child was really sad, or if a child came up to you and said, yeah, no, I probably couldn't do that, you'd be like, what the heck? You have your whole life ahead of you. Why would you even say that? You would never look at a child and be like, you are not going to succeed in life. Why? because we see so much potential in children. We see so much potential in children, and somehow that fizzles away while we go through life. And we need to bring that back. And like, even if so nobody else holds space for that in our lives, we have to hold space for it in ourselves. So a technique that I did when I really couldn't find empathy for myself, I couldn't find the will to be like, yeah, I can definitely do this. I have a picture of myself, I think I was 4 or 3, on my desk. And I just looked at her, and it got me emotional. When I was all alone, it got me emotional because I was like, how dare I tell this little girl, tell this little baby that they can't do what they want to do, that they're not going to succeed, that they're not worth it, that they don't deserve what they want, that they don't deserve love, they don't deserve consistent love, that they don't deserve everything that they could ever want and more. I would never tell her that. I would never tell the little baby that. The little baby being me. Ever. So why would I tell myself that? I'm literally just that version 17 years later. 20 years later. I'm literally just that version. But I've just gone through so much, and I started examining my little hands in the photo, and I started looking at just my little smile, and I just realized, holy shit, like, this body has taken me through so much of my life. This brain has gotten me through so much in my life, and the way that I've grown up, slowly but surely, somehow, I don't know who hurt me, but I started not believing in myself. I believed in myself in certain aspects, and I didn't believe myself in other aspects, but all in all, like, if you don't believe in yourself in all, like, do you really believe in yourself? So I found empathy through looking at who I was as a child. And I encourage you to do the same. It's one of the easiest ways to find empathy where you don't think you have any. Because you get out of your own head and you start seeing a tangible example of, what am I doing to myself? Why am I speaking to myself like that? Why am I not nurturing this baby like I should? And this child is in us. Lest you forget, I don't even know if that's a word, but don't forget, we are the sum of everything we've ever experienced. That includes what the child in you had to go through. If you had a traumatizing childhood, if you had bad things happen to you, if trauma can look different in many different ways, right? It's relative. But it's something that really is deep with you and it really has hurt you for multiple years. That child needed to carry that, and then that 10-year-old, and then that 15-year-old, and now that 20-year-old, and then as we continue to grow into the later part of our 20s, it's our responsibility to in some ways cradle that experience, in some ways carry that baby and be like, it's all going to be okay. Everything's gonna work out. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. You have other people around you that are here for you. I won't let you feel unfulfilled. I won't let you end up doing something I don't want to do. Like, it's just the way that you would speak to yourself as a child, and a child in general is different the way that you speak to yourself now, and I think that gap needs to be closed in order to feel more empathy for ourselves. And then after you've gained that empathy for yourself, I think it's way easier to embark on what you now want to in the healing journey that you're in the growing and the mindset and the body and everything. It's way easier to jump into knowing that level of yourself and reflecting that deep on who you are and who you have been and who you will continue to be. So with the aspect of play, it doesn't always have to be throwing sand at each other in a sandbox. A lot of the time when we're older, it also shows up in the experiences that we choose to engage in, the risks that we take, the fun urges that we follow. If you've ever been like, oh, I actually want to do that. I think that would be super fun. I think that would be very good for me. But how many times have you stopped yourself because you're like, no, that's not what society tells me I should do, or it's not productive enough, right? Like all these words that we heard before. The truth is, allowing yourself to play is allowing yourself to explore those different nudges. It's allowing yourself to really go after those little things that you want to do. And if they fail, who cares? I've heard so many times there's no such thing as failure. They're all lessons. And I think it's like a constant reminder that I have to give myself, because obviously I'm not there at the point where I'm not fearing it. I feel like fear is a part of life, but it's just choosing whatever. Like, it's choosing whatever. Let's just go for it. Because what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? An example of this recently is starting this podcast, right? It's doing anything that I've never done before. I've just recently gotten a new job and I'm scared. But to honor the play side of me, it's like this Instagram or like pursuing anything you want to do. You're not going to get it right every time, but that's playing. You play with what works, with what doesn't, with what could happen better, with different aspects of yourself. That's what play is. So kids don't even care if the people around them are going to think that they're weird because they start belly dancing in the mud. Okay? They don't. They're just like, this is what I feel, therefore I will do it. And I think that incorporating an aspect of that into our daily lives can really replenish who we are and nourish who we are as human beings. Because the baby, the child, is still in you. It's still in every single one of us. And we need to be able to tap into that kid energy, that playful energy, to be able to continue to have fun in this life. Because why take everything so seriously? Why is everything so serious? Why so serious? Like, literally, I remember that once upon a time, I was on a date way back when, and I wanted to go explore the place that we were in because it was outdoors, and I was like, this would be so fun if we just explored. We didn't stay on the trail. And they looked at me and they're like, no. They judged me for wanting to explore my fun urges. And that made me feel like shit. They said, I've already experienced the exploring phase, like, just no. And they made me feel so shit about who I was trying to be and how fun I wanted to be, and it made me feel so constricted. It made me feel like I didn't have the freedom to just do whatever. It doesn't all have to make sense. Not everything that a playful energy does makes sense. So you're gonna have people around you that are going to perhaps judge, perhaps feel like weird about it. Let's say if you're as open as I am with how your playful energy comes out. But we have to realize that it's because those individuals can't see it in themselves. They don't allow themselves the freedom. They don't allow themselves the freedom to be who they want to be, to act how they want to act. And so there's definitely some empathy there for the other individual. But now I nurture an environment where I get to play, and I'm not perfect. A lot of the days I'm working on it, and it's a ever working process, but it's way more fun when you're playing in life than not. And talking about being a child, let's talk about the terrible twos. Okay, I'm not a mother. I'm not going to be a mother for a minute, but we've all heard about the terrible twos. Now the terrible 20s. And I just thinking about that, not that the 20s are terrible, but that we throw a lot of tantrums. I throw a lot of tantrums. Even with myself. I've mentioned in a previous podcast how I've literally had to yell at myself in a car. Just literally just yell at myself for no particular reason, but just telling myself to get out of my own way. And sometimes you just need to throw tantrums, right? Because there's a lot of energy that gets built up in our bodies, especially as we're experiencing so many new things when we're entering new chapters into our lives. And that's why kids get so like terrible, quote unquote. It's because there's so much more overstimulation. They know so much more, and they can speak, and it's just a new phase in their life. And I think that manifests again once we're in our 20s, just slightly different way, because obviously we can't be crying really loud in Superstore, but it's about allowing that energy, that frustration, that all those experiences to still come out, because that's really how because you're going to fail, quote unquote, again. You're going to fail, and then maybe there's a tantrum after that, and then maybe you go back to playing in the sand. That's very much the cycle of children. They play, someone hits them in the eye with sand, they get so upset, they start crying. The mom soothes them, or the dad soothes them, their guardian, anyone that's around them soothes them. And then they're like, you know what? It wasn't that bad. Let me go back out into the sandbox. And that's really, I think, a lesson for all of us as we are diving into this new energetic new year in March. That we just gotta try stuff. If it fails and if we get upset about it, to let it happen. This is a very overstimulating new phase in our lives that is meant to bring a lot of rewards and a lot of success, but in order to get up the hill, you gotta trip 1 or 2 times, maybe more. So I hope that this emphasized how important it is to connect with your inner child, to play more in your daily life, and to nurture an environment where you allow yourself to have fun, play, because it's not unproductive to make time for yourself to do the nudges that you want to do. It actually is nourishing, and it helps your soul, and it helps who you are, and it helps moods, because you're not so serious. Really, like, in a flash, like, whoa, like, I thought I was like 15 like 2 days ago, but I wasn't. It was multiple years ago. So this life is gonna go a little bit fast, I feel. And I'm still young, but like I feel like it's gonna go fast. That's what all the older people say. So you might as well enjoy while we're here, and while we're moving, and while we're living and loving all those around us. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Go ahead and follow the 20verse on Instagram. I almost said the 20verse podcast, which is my old handle. I would love for you to leave a review. You don't even have to put your name. You just gotta leave a review, because I know so many of you are listening. I would love for other people to be able to explore it. Share it with your friends. Go DM me your revelations, what you thought about this episode, and we will talk next week. Bye. If you loved what you heard today, go ahead and follow and subscribe the 20verse podcast. You can also follow me over at the 20verse, where I give you motivational posts, tips, and tricks, and keep you updated on this podcast every single week. Send it to your friends that are also in the 20verse. I'd love to hear their thoughts, and I'd love for them to join the family. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'll talk to you next week.